Court will come to order. It is Wednesday, June the 29th, 2022. It's 9 o'clock in the morning and the Kerr County Commissioners Court is now in session for a budget workshop. We don't have any public input today. The only people that we're really going to hear from are the various department heads and officials about their budget requests. So with that, let's just jump right in. We don't have a prayer, pledge. We don't have public input. We don't have commissioners' comments. All of that is for the regular meetings. This is just a workshop. So we'll proceed with the 198th District Court.
Morning, gentlemen.
You have visual aids.
I do for part 3, since I'm laying 3 budgets out for you today.
Okay. Let's find your
198th
tab.
District Court, the only changes we're requesting. Hold on.
It's tab 436, Fund 436.
Okay, that's the one we were handed, right?
Right.
The last one.
You may proceed.
Thank you. The only changes we're requesting are on, let me get the sub-line item, 415, Special District Judge. We've requested an increase of $3,000, and I'm going to group these together if you don't mind. And then on Special Court Reporter, we've requested an increase of $1,000. And then on interpreters, we've requested an increase of $1,500. The court reporter and the district judge is directly related to the fact that we're still trying to recover from COVID. We're trying to squeeze in as many visiting judges as we can squeeze in to try to catch the docket up. And that requires some expenses if we bring somebody from out of area. State covers most of our expenses, but there's a few that trickle down to the county, and I just don't want to hit the county with any unexpected budgeted expenses. As far as the interpreters go, frankly, we're just running into more and more Spanish-speaking defendants. And we've gone from needing an interpreter maybe once a month to now we need one in almost every single criminal court area.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Looks reasonable and good.
Yeah. It looks like it's about, a little bit more than $5,000 more than what we anticipated.
It's $5,000 more than was recommended, and it's $3,000 more than last year's budget.
Right. We understand. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll pretend to be Pat Patillo for a moment if you want to call it 216.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and call the special drug court. That is yours.
Okay. Well,
And that's, let's find that tab.
What's the next one? 37.
Yeah, I see it there. 437.
for the drug court, I'm going to start out with the visual aid. This is one of our graduates, and you can see the difference between the before and after of this young lady. It's been very successful. We've had a number of folks that frankly have not made it through the program because it's a very stringent program with a lot of requirements. We began in February of 2019, as the court is aware. Currently we have 12 folks in the program. We have 10 folks in the history of the program that have been unsuccessfully discharged. And perhaps most importantly, not only for those discharged, but also those in the program, so far we have 0 recidivism. So nobody's committed any new crimes that's gone through the program, either partial or full. So it's being very successful. The problem we're running into is that we started out the program with small steps, and I think that was communicated early on. But now the program's grown. Instead of 5 or 6 folks, we have 12. We would eventually like to get the program up to about 20, but we've been stair-stepping it. Thus far to this point, many of our providers they're being paid until our budget runs out, and then we have a lot of freebies for them from folks. And that's going to run out. Counselors have been providing free services. We've been stretching all the departments where all departments are providing free services. The drug testing, of which we've performed, looks like almost 660 drug tests, are pretty much self-funded. We have the participants paying for those. But for instance, during COVID, instead of the drug test, we had to use these sweat patches. Mm-hmm. And those are significantly more expensive. The program had to eat the cost of those. The program is based on accountability, as you know, and that requires that we stay on top of the participants. It also requires a significant investment in their counseling, because the idea is not just a temporary patch, but to change their whole lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And thus far, we have right at 2,000 treatment hours. through Creekview, and just as importantly, the Creekview program actually has a physician on staff. So we have a physician that can provide additional medications, additional guidance for participants. So that being said, the courts would respectfully request an increase in the budget. I know doubling from 20 to 40,000 is kind of a little bit of a heartburn, but whatever you're willing to give us, we would appreciate it.
Rex, is that increase based on that some of the services will not be provided free next year, you think? Or, I mean, is that a...
We're exceeding our budget dramatically. And Andre's been nice enough to pull money out of her budget to slip over to try to fund a lot of the services. And, we've hit the point where we're just gonna have to start cutting back.
I see you already basically gone through last year's, or your current budget.
Correct. We have a lot of participants in the program, and even our designated defense attorney, which we have to have for due process, is donating the time for free.
Do you anticipate, even with the increase, there'll still be a lot of donated services required?
Correct.
Well, I compliment you. I never cease to be amazed about how the county makes do with the limited resources and facilities that we have. And I'm impressed with what you've been able to accomplish. And we'll do what we can.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is the 216th. That's tab 435. And you're going to handle that also?
I will.
Okay.
Judge Patillo is requesting an increase in the same line items that I did, which is the special district judge, the special court reporter, and then the interpreter. And to make a long story short, it's for the same reasons. We're playing catch up in the courts, and then frankly, we have a much greater need for an interpreter.
Now, he's got $1,000 more on the special court reporter. You know why?
He's more wordy than I am. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I really don't know.
I would suggest that we put them at the same request.
Either way, I mean, that's fine too. I mean,
Well, you got a $20,000 difference here, and these $1,000 things add up at the end of the day. So,
I agree.
yeah. And if there's a real problem with that, then he can tell us what the problem is.
Just pass along the comments to Judge Patillo so he knows what the input was.
Tell him if Rex can do it, he can do it.
If I may, just a second, the district courts are kind of interesting because these costs are going to be split with like Bandera and Gillespie County. So I just wanted to throw that in also. This is 100% of the cost of running their courts.
What does that mean, Your Honor?
It means Bandera pays about 25% and Gillespie pays about, 30, 1/3? And of course, ironically, our courts spend about 50% of the time in both of those counties anyway. But it is what it is. Okay, very good.
Thank y'all
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, I'll run upstairs to the court.
Okay, thank you. Juvenile probation. Now, I just want to bring to everybody's attention that it's just the lawyers and the chief juvenile probation officer that wear coats and ties to this court. Go ahead. I'm teasing you,
He
Jason.
means you're easy to spot.
No, he's always he's very professional.
Good morning, Your Honor, Commissioners. I would like to make one positive change before we get started on the punching bag. That would be to 10,574.82. I requested $175,000. That was based on the operations of the juvenile detention facility reopening. As of right now, I would like to lower that amount to $104,000 in that request. The number that I come to on that is $75,000 based on a 40% increase Overall, what we're seeing in juvenile probation in the state is, there are two numbers that I want to throw out at you. One is the increase in detention facilities and placement facilities. We're seeing across the board a 40 to 60% increase in our operational cost. Basically, we're being billed more and more. Detention facilities pre-COVID were about $100 a day. We're seeing now $200 to $240 a day is what we're having to pay for detention with our new contracts that we're just now getting in this week. The other number that I'm going to throw at you is an increase last year over this year. This year over last year, we've seen an increase of about 15 to 16% in our number of referrals. So our numbers are going up, and we're seeing a higher operational cost. So any increase that you see in this budget, in my request, are going to be based on that. That we are seeing significant cost increases, especially for placement. It's just skyrocketed, and we don't see any change in that.
As a footnote, Commissioner Gibson and I have been working with Jason on trying to make our facility available to be leased. And that was, they withdrew their proposal. We're back at the negotiating table with them, trying to see what we can work out. We were looking at, when they ran the numbers, the reason that they got cold feet is they thought they were going to have to charge $275 a day for that to work for them. And so when we talk about these increased numbers, they're real and they're not going away. And that was not economically viable for them. That's why we went back to the negotiating table. So, and right now, it's anybody's guess what they're going to go to. There is an acute shortage of juvenile probation beds in the state.
I think that all chiefs in the state would agree, and the term that everyone uses is crisis, and it truly is. We have felony offenders on a regular basis we cannot detain, that need to be detained. And we have misdemeanor offenders every week that we would like to detain, we can't. That happens on a weekly basis.
And I hate to see the increases, but this is one of the budgets that you've done a great job over the years trying to keep it down, numbers down, and this is something that we really need to do. These kids need help. If we don't help them, it's just going to get worse.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And we just don't, we can't predict what the costs are going to be at this point. The shortage is that acute.
We can predict that it's not going down.
We know that. We know that. And so I know he's got a $100,000 number on here that he's added to his budget, but I can sit here and tell you, I honestly don't know what it's going to cost us to house these kids.
Well, typically, you don't exaggerate. If anything, you're very conservative on your numbers, so.
I try to be, Commissioner, and my goal is every year to give back as much money as possible. And that is a goal that I've had for the last 16 years.
But our job is to make sure you don't take more than you need.
Yes, sir.
Going into balancing this thing if we can. So that's a round number. That $100,000 is.
104 actually would be based on a 40% increase, and that's,
Okay.
That's speculation. I mean, that's.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
But
So.
yeah, I think that the 40% is conservative because we are seeing some contracts that are coming in at 50% already. And I've been told to expect a couple of 60% increases. And again, it's the placement. We have the same issue with everybody else does on fuel and those types of things. But the placement costs and the detention costs, those are the ones that are really, I mean, to more than double, from pre-COVID to today, when we're looking at, 100 to 150% increases, we haven't seen that, it's unheard of in juvenile justice for sure.
Okay, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioners.
Ag Extension Office.
They're punting till July.
Okay, so that's a pass. County Attorney, what tab?
475.
Got it.
I'm not requesting an increase in my requested budget from last year. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, how do you convince everybody else to do that?
Well,
We have needs. I have other requests that won't be left.
she's had a vacant position for some time now.
Yeah,
right.
That's how she's done it.
That helps.
Well, it helps and hurts.
Helps this, but not her.
Yeah.
But y'all all feel the pain from our office not having fully staffed, so we just,
Exactly.
things take a little bit more time.
Okay. Good job. Thanks. County Attorney Hot Check Fund.
Same comment.
Very good. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
216th District Attorney.
Good morning.
What tab are we here?
On 83.
Trying to find it.
What number?
On 83.
83.
Just as a reminder, I don't know if you remember, but when I first became DA, budget year 2016, 2017, I decreased our budget significantly. Then the next year I decreased it a little more. 2 years after that, it stayed the same. I think last year it went up a tiny, tiny bit. This year I do have some changes. Basically, what we do every budget year is we try to budget for the next year. And because of COVID, we decreased our budget some last year in some areas. For example, conferences, we weren't really going to conferences. I believe it was actually the budget year before. It was the first budget cycle after COVID. This year, there's a few things, a few increases. First of all, bonds and insurances, that's going to increase by $1,000 because we now have an investigator that is a peace officer, and the TAC insurance costs more if we have a peace officer on staff. So that's the reason for the $1,000 increase on bonds and insurances. Next one is expert witnesses. Last year's budget was $10,000. We have actually moved money into that fund this year from the savings from not having an investigator for some time, as well as not having the part-time investigator. The reason for that being is that we've already spent close to, I don't have the exact figure in front of me, I can find it, but it's about $9,500, and we have 2 more big jury trials coming up this year that will require expert witnesses. One of them is the Barboza case, that's the intoxication and manslaughter case involving the fireman that's accused of committing that offense. That one will require experts. And also we have a highly contested sexual assault of a child case in Gillespie County that's very DNA intensive. That defendant's been in custody for over 2 years because we've been waiting on DNA. And all plea negotiations have been exhausted. We're so far off. That's going to be going to trial. That actually was going to go to trial this month, but that's when my assistant DA ended up in the hospital and the case had to be reset. She ended up in the hospital a few days before the trial, so that had to be reset. But that will probably bring us up to $15,000 for the year. Next year we have several cases. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 murder cases. I know at least 2 of those will 99% chance go to jury trial. I don't foresee us settling those. The other 2 may or may not settle. We also anticipate presenting another case that will be pretty expert intensive to the grand jury in August. It'll be a murder case. And we also have 2 intoxication manslaughter cases that I think will require expert witnesses. One of those intoxication manslaughter cases may settle. We're in negotiations on that case, and I'm hopeful that it will settle. The other one I seriously doubt will settle. Anytime we need an expert, it's about $5,000 per trial. We do try, I think we do a really good job with settling cases without giving them away. For example, the intoxication manslaughter case that was just handled, I believe it was last week, roadless, that one we were able to negotiate after lots and lots of negotiating with the defense attorney as well as victim involvement. We had a lot of victims involved in that case. We came up with a good settlement in that case that ended with a just result, but saved the county a lot of money because that would have really put us way over budget on experts. So that's why I'm asking for the $5,000 increase for this coming budget cycle, just for seeing what we might need next year. I think we'll need about $5,000 more because that's what we're going to end up using for this year. Any questions on that one? Then we have, actually our phones went down $500. There is a new line item, the witness travel. What basically happens is if we have a witness that we need for a hearing or a jury trial, obviously if they say we can't make it, we can't pay, we don't have money, we try to get around not using them at all, but sometimes we just can't get around that. And what's happened in the past is basically I front them money out of my personal checking account through a Cash App or Venmo or otherwise, and then I get reimbursed. But what happens is sometimes they need that money fronted, and we keep taking it out of miscellaneous, so we've created a new line item. Also, although witnesses are ultimately reimbursed by the state, those that are subpoenaed, the state doesn't always cover everything. Candace is here, and if you have any questions about what they don't cover, they usually cover mileage and meals, rental car, air ticket, but there's some other things that they don't cover. And so over the years, we've ended up with about $3,000 that are not reimbursed. So that's why we created that line item, so it would be easier to keep track of. And we have somewhere, for example, to reimburse me after I've fronted a witness some of my personal money. And then that will be replenished once the state reimburses for witness travel. The next one is mileage. I believe, well, what was recommended was $2,500. We are requesting $6,000. Here's the explanation for that. As you will recall, previously my office, each assistant DA had a $3,000 mileage stipend. Instead of turning in their mileage regularly, they would just have a stipend, and that covered all of their travel to go to conferences, all of their travel to go to court in other counties, all of their travel to visit expert witnesses, crime scenes, meet with witnesses, meet with law enforcement out of county. So that was a total of $9,000. It was $3,000 for the 2 assistant DAs, and then $3,000 was divided between the 2 legal assistants for their travel for court in Gillespie County and running office errands. Last year, the court voted to not do that anymore and instead just have employees reimbursed like the rest of the county employees per mileage. That way they'd be reimbursed for their exact mileage. Well, I forgot after the court voted to do that, which was at the end of towards the end of the budget workshops, after I realized, I was made aware that that would no longer be part of their salary, their mileage stipend, I forgot to plug it back in somewhere else. So this year we have moved money around again from the savings of not having an investigator, a full-time investigator for about 4 months and a part-time investigator for several months. We have been able to take money out of that and put it into reimbursed travel, which is basically mileage. And the way we came up with that figure is just for the required travel to Gillespie County for 2 legal assistants to go to 2 pretrials per month, and for the assistant DA to go to scheduled court settings, which would be two settings a month for pretrials, 1 setting a month for grand jury, and 1 setting a month for contested hearings. Then there's also 1 setting a month for a jury trial that involves 3 days of travel back and forth for a jury trial. Or jury trials usually take 3 days. Sometimes they go into 4. Rarely do they only take 2 days. So just for that travel alone is $5,031.44. That does not include attorneys and investigators travel to meet with witnesses, meet with experts, go to meetings. We have meetings with law enforcement in Gillespie County. Also another absolute every repeating travel to Gillespie County besides court is also we have a multidisciplinary team meeting for child sexual abuse and physical abuse cases that takes place in Gillespie County. So that's just what we need every year is the $5,443.95. That means that what I've included in the budget is about $556.56 for other travel that I've mentioned is to meet with law enforcement, meet with witnesses. Anytime we have a hearing on motion to suppress or a jury trial, we have to meet with all the witnesses. And it's not just on one case, it's on multiple cases because we're expected to be ready on multiple cases on the jury trial dockets. And we have multiple hearings, motions to suppress, especially in Gillespie County. We don't have as many in Kerr County. So that's how we came up with the $6,000 figure. This is still less mileage than before because before we had $3,000 per assistant DA, $6,000 plus $3,000 between two legal assistants for travel to Gillespie County for court. And then we had an additional $1,000 just for things that weren't covered, for example, for the investigator or other travel by someone else in the office that didn't already have a mileage stipend. So previously, we were getting $10,000 a year for mileage, and now it's $6,000. Any questions on that? That's significant. So, but again, last budget cycle, I forgot to plug it back in after the court voted not to do mileage stipends anymore. Okay, then the lease copier, it looks like our budget increased by $50. We do have, basically the way we arrived at that figure is the yearly cost of leasing the copier is that includes the yearly cost for leasing the copier plus about $45 a month, which is the additional charge for color copies. We're charged separately for color copies. Our cost is usually $45. We have dockets that we print 4 times a month for everybody in court, and those are color coded. And then also sometimes we have exhibits, documents that we offer into evidence that have to be color, but it's only $45 a month for those color copies. So that's where that figure comes from. Okay, on conferences, that has also increased. Basically, we have not been attending conferences. I think I didn't have time to look on the State Bar website, and I think I'm about to run into issues with not having enough conference hours. I had sufficient that I think it carried me through now. I don't recall going to a conference in a couple of years, and I don't recall my assistant DA, John Hoover, going to a conference in a couple of years, or my other assistant DA. Mr. Hoover is registered to go to a conference in July, and normally there's, as you can imagine, there's a lot of conferences out there, but the ones that my office normally attends are the CJIS conference, which is every other year. We didn't have one last year, so we'll have one this year. Usually, not everybody attends it. That's usually attended by my office manager and usually one of the legal assistants, Cammie Feldman. They are both very good and quite the experts on CJIS, so I always have them attend the CJIS conference. The key personnel, TDCAA, Texas District and County Attorneys Association, key personnel conference is usually attended by all of my staff, not the attorneys, but the legal assistants and the office manager, and that's who that conference is geared to. That's usually attended by them. Again, it seems like we have not been to conferences the last couple of years, but we need to start going again. The TDCAA annual conference, that's a big prosecutors conference where we get a lot of bang for our buck. It's a 4-day conference, and we get a lot of continuing legal education hours. It's geared specifically for prosecutors. Sometimes, there's also the State Bar of Texas Criminal Law Conference. My assistant DA, John Hoover, frequently opts to go to that one instead of the annual conference. That one's also geared strictly towards criminal law, I should say, not prosecution, but criminal law. We also attend, normally every year we attend the TDCAA elected conference. That's both myself and my first assistant, John Hoover. That's open to not only the electeds, but also first assistants, so he normally attends that. There's also a Crimes Against Children conference in Dallas every year that we normally attend. And that one is all about basically crimes against children, sexual assault, physical abuse. And that is a 1-week conference in Dallas. It's huge. Everybody from, people nationwide attend it as well as worldwide. It's a very well-known and respected conference that we haven't been able to attend. A lot of the reasons we haven't been able to attend is because of the workload, but we need to start making time because those are really important and we learn a lot of things at these conferences. There's also another conference that we regularly attend, and that's an appellate conference that's put on by the Court of Criminal Appeals. The Court of Criminal Appeals, as Judge Kelly knows, is the highest court of appeal in the state for criminal cases. And every year they put on an appellate conference, and we usually attend that, but we have not been attending that. So the amount requested is about $1,200 per person, since we have 7 people in our office that attend conferences. Usually attorneys will attend 2 conferences, other staff in the office will attend 1, or sometimes none, but usually they'll attend at least 1 conference, and it'll usually be the key personnel and every other year the CJIS conference by 2 of the staff. Let me see here. And then the only other increase was for professional services. In the past, we've budgeted $10,000. That, what we pay out of professional services is for transcripts on appeals, state appeals. Sometimes we just need them because the court will need to make findings of fact and conclusions of law on a case, and so we'll have to get the transcript for that. Also, what comes out of there is any interpreter services that we have to cover. The court covers interpreters for court proceedings, and I agree with what Judge Emerson said. We basically have to have an interpreter at every docket because we are seeing more and more Spanish speakers because of these smuggling cases. What's happened now is in the past, the actual coyotes, as they're called, were actually doing the driving of the vehicles. Now they've gotten smart, and what they do basically is when they arrive to pick up a load of people, they will ask who knows how to drive, and then whoever knows how to drive gets to drive the rest of the way. So when we stop them, the driver is usually going to be somebody that's here illegally and does not speak English. In addition, other ways that we use money in that line item is we listen to jail phone calls for these Spanish-speaking defendants. We listen to them for all defendants, but for these Spanish-speaking defendants, a lot of times we have jail calls that are very incriminating, so we need to get them translated. So that's gone up again because of the number of Spanish speakers on our dockets. But that's people who speak Spanish only and no English. So that's why we've increased it by $500 to cover what's required. For example, I had a couple of phone calls that were 5 minutes each, translated in the Robles case. And although I usually try to put that off till the very, very end until I know it's absolutely going to be needed for court, in this particular case, I felt that it would really help settle the case because it was very incriminating. And just those 10 minutes worth of phone calls that were partly Spanish, partly English were close to $1,000 just for those 2 translations. So those can be very expensive. So that's the reason for the $500 increase in that. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Only comment I have is on conferences. You know, I understand that you need to go to conference, but if we could maybe pair that to 6,000, which would allow 5 people in your office to go to a conference this year, and then maybe try to keep it up there next year and then reduce it, and we get back in line. Everything else seems justifiable and reasonable.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And I don't know if this is the time, I did ask, as the court's aware, I think I let everyone know, my assistant DA, Melissa, sadly has gone back to El Paso. So we've got that open position, we just posted it yesterday after 5 o'clock. And so I have asked that included in my budget, I be given, what I've asked for in the budget, technically I guess would be $100,000 for that salary, but that doesn't mean I'll pay them that, I just want that available. The salary range will be 85 to 100,000 commensurate with experience, just like for a felony public defender. And I don't know if this is the time to ask or to bring that up or not, but in case it is.
So you should have that, well, hopefully you'll have that position filled in the next couple of
The
months.
sooner, the better, absolutely.
So you'll be able to have a final number there,
Correct.
hopefully before the end of the budget process.
Correct. Yes, the sooner the better. Of course, it took a while to fill the investigator position in the part-time because as I think I saw the county mention, people just aren't applying. I mean, it took us months to fill the part-time position. But yes, my hope is to get it filled before August for sure, hopefully in July. All right.
I appreciate that you're not going to be able to answer my question today, but I would like to get together with you sometime between now and when we finalize the budget, because I simply don't understand why your district attorney's office requires $210,000 more in the budget than Mr. Harpo's. He's doing something right. I'm trying to figure out what's the reason for this.
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to meet with that, and I'll get the numbers on our caseload as well.
But that's a significant difference, and we really need to understand why.
Correct, yes, and I've brought the budget way down, as I mentioned, since I started. But yes, I'm happy to answer that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harpo, it's your turn. 198. And by the way, Steve, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Well, I was going to say, good morning, but we don't have any significant changes on ours. So.
I know, and I look back over the years, your office has been consistently run for about $200,000 less than the other one, and I don't understand why.
Well, they're two different apples and oranges, I guess. I don't know.
Very good, very well. I have no problems with your budget.
Any other questions of me? No. May I be excused? We've got court upstairs.
Sure. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but we've got their DA forfeiture.
Oh, yeah, we did.
also.
We've got the 216th and the 190 DA forfeiture budgets. But I don't see any change there.
No,
Either
sir.
one of them. So I don't think they're an issue. Okay. You may be excused.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Thank you, everyone.
I like a hat.
Give a thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Constable Precinct 3.
Oh,
What are,
Lucy's DA forfeiture,
I didn't see any change there.
it is under 75.
Okay.
I think you just present to show them what you will be spending out of these.
We actually create a budget just in anticipation of what we might spend. Again, just for the record and for those on YouTube, this is not county money, this is forfeiture money. This is money that has been seized because it was used in the commission of an offense, a felony offense. That's laid out in Chapter 39 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. And I believe that it's the 198 that legislatively has to seek permission from the Commissioner's Court to spend their money. We do not, but we still submit a budget. Mostly what we use our forfeiture money for is for law enforcement purposes. For example, the Sheriff's Office, their narcotics unit needed some desks, and we bought them desks out of that. In the past, when law enforcement doesn't have money in their budget to go to a conference. We have used money out of our budget to help law enforcement attend conferences. And that's really about the only thing we use our forfeiture money for. We also did use forfeiture money to pay for a private lab to do some DNA testing in that Gillespie County case that's going to be going to a jury trial in August with that defendant I mentioned that's been in jail for over 2 years because we've been waiting on DNA. Because when we needed additional testing, the DPS crime lab said it would be at least 6 months, so we went ahead and used forfeiture money for that. So that's usually what we use our forfeiture money for, law enforcement purposes, and as needed for DNA testing through a private lab, which we've done not just in that case, but in a couple of other cases.
Any questions?
We
What's
seldom
your-
use everything that we've budgeted for
What's
that.
the balance of your forfeiture fund?
Candace, you know the balance?
It's about 130 or 140,000 right now.
120 buffer plus or minus?
130.
130?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Paul.
Judge, before we get to that,
Okay.
if it's your balance, where'd Lucy go? Oh.
Sorry, Paul.
If the balance is 130, why don't you shift some of that money to someone to reduce some of your other line items like conferences? I mean, I know that's something that's been
Yeah,
done
I
in the
don't
past.
think that's permitted, correct, Heather?
I'd have to look at my list. It's
Yes.
on my desk.
Yes, I'd have to look at that. That's my understanding, but I'll get you that information. I'll go to the AG's office, and that's my understanding.
My recollection is that the 198 did that, and that's what got them in, and not doing it is where they went on the conferences got them in trouble with the legislature.
I know the 198 uses their, for example, their investigator has a take-home car, and they purchase vehicles with them, and they,
Right. Anyway,
all that.
a
But
lot of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to, I'll answer your question, but I'll have to get with the Attorney General's office, the
Sure.
forfeiture attorney, and get an answer to that.
Yeah, it seems if there's a balance there, it'd be recommend trying to use it and lower portions of your budget if possible.
And we have, again, like I said, we use it for conferences, but it's for law enforcement, because
Right.
we're allowed to use it for law enforcement purposes, and that's how we get around that. We've gotten permission to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to make a side note on that. I do believe that if the commissioners have denied something in our budget, we cannot use forfeiture funds for it.
Okay, Candace is,
And there is case law on that in Florida too.
that's correct, because I have asked Candace in the past, can we, our staff does not get reimbursed for meals when they travel out of county, and I had asked Candace in the past, can we reimburse them through a forfeiture fund, and that's what she had told me, so. But I will double check and get back to you.
But if you chose to do it, you could maybe.
Well, I only want to do what's lawful. But I'll get back to you on
Okay,
that question.
thank you.
Thank you.
There's an article on TCA that gives you a chart and the rules and the cases, so.
Yes,
I'll
that's
forward
in
it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Paul.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
What number are we here?
We are
Funds.
number
Looking at it.
553.
Okay.
So, go easy on me, this is my first. All right. 10 months, just over 10 months in office, and I'll tell you, I'm learning a lot and I'm enjoying it. So, in comparison to what I've heard so far, I'm just asking for a minuscule amount of an increase. Starting with bonds, I'm going to have to renew my bond, and also my reserve deputies' bonds coming up this next budget year. So that's an increase of $300 from the recommended zero. From postage, recommended was $30. I'd like to increase it by $70 so I can at least buy a roll of stamps. And in some of these cases, these court cases, I've had a lot of out-of-county, out-of-state tax citations and court cases. A lot of them I'm having to send back by certified mail, and so that's an increase there to absorb about a $30, $40 increase there. Office supplies stay the same, books, publication dues stay the same. On gasoline, obviously we all know the increase of gasoline, so I'm just asking for a $620 increase on that amount. And based on my calculations on an 8-month average, I average about $150 a month. So I'm seeing an increase of about 34% increase. So that's where I went with the $620 increase based on my mileage and patrols. The significant increase is for uniforms. The recommended that's been noted for the past several years has been $200. I'm asking $3,600, and this is why. You can hardly get anything for $200. Maybe that's a shirt, maybe that's a pair of pants. In my last 26 years, I've worn a uniform, and the reason I've worn a uniform is to represent the office that I work for. If I'm going to be out there conducting traffic stops or doing any kind of law enforcement duty, making an arrest, knocking on people's doors to either have them evicted or removed from their home, I don't want there to be any doubt in anyone's mind as to who I am and the reason I'm there. So for liability purposes and to professionalize the office, I want to have a uniform. What you see me wearing today just came out of my closet, and I only have 2 of each. And these are refurbished uniforms. So I've kind of put this together just to be able to get out there and so people recognize who I am and what I'm doing, and so that the amount of $3,600 just for myself and equipment and uniforms, along with just for my 2 reserve deputies, just getting them 1 shirt, 1 short sleeve shirt, 1 long sleeve, and 1 pair of pants, and the tools and equipment that are needed when I need them to come out and do enforcement work. It's a total of $3,600. Okay, and give or take some equipment there. So that's an explanation on that. Any questions on that one? Okay.
Well, Paul, it seems a little high looking at what the other constables are. I mean, I
Yes,
have
sir.
no idea what uniforms cost.
Yeah, and I can't speak on behalf of the other constables on what they choose to do for their office and, how they want to dress. But we're in some questionable times, where, people question, who are you and why are you stopping me at 8 o'clock at night and not having the proper gear and equipment. And, this last year for the winter, I was wearing just a jacket out of my closet, so.
I want you to have uniform. I just want to know
Sure.
for sure that that's a good number.
Yes,
look
sir.
bad.
That's based on estimates that I was
Okay.
able to get, from the supplier.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then once that's done, then we can go back to the $200, and then it's just
Right.
maintenance
Right.
at that
Initial.
point. I just need seed money.
Okay. That's good.
Vehicle insurance stays the same. Vehicle repair, same thing, stays the same. I am adding some additional lighting because I've realized that in running on hot calls to assist other agencies, I don't have a lot of lighting for intersection control. So I want to prevent an accident, so I'm going to have to add some more lighting to the siding of my vehicle. On conference training, I've learned right away in the history of the constable's office, and I didn't go very far back, but there's never been a conference or training line item. And I just didn't seem to understand why not. Because as law enforcement officers, there's state mandated training that we're required to attend. And in doing some research, I found out that the constables have been using the LEOSA funds, which is the education standard funds that each year the Texas Comptroller's Office provides these funds to law enforcement agencies. In my office alone, it's just an average of about $500 to $600 a year. And so those funds have been used for training and/or training equipment. For example, if I go to the range to qualify, the bullets that I purchased can be used out of that fund. So when you're only getting $500 to $600 a year, you're not going to get much training, especially if you have to travel, if there's any hotel cost or per diem or anything like that. So this currently right now this week is the Justice of the Peace Constables Conference in College Station. I just ran some numbers so that just to give you an idea, but just for that conference alone, with hotel, per diem, travel, everything, you're looking at about $1,000 just for that conference alone. It's about a 4 or 5 day training. And that training alone covers the state mandated courses. So I put in 2,000 because I've got some other training that I'm looking at. I'm signed up to take a breaching class for the alert program, and some other things, some of which are state funded, but they're out of town. So I can cut costs on trying to find training that's for free, but I may have to travel to get to those trainings, so I'm taking into consideration hotel and per diem and travel costs. So that's where I put the 2,000 at that point for the training. I did add that in my line item because that was something that's never been done. So with the auditor's office, they assisted me in including the conference training line item for the first time ever into the constable's budget. And so I can also say that I spoke with the other constables about this, and I don't know what their decision was on where they're going to go with that as far as including that in their budget, but they've been made aware of that. And then as the last one on the operating equipment, recommended was $540. I'm asking for $1,006 increase on that, and that is for purchase of some breaching tools and a shield, kind of it's a ballistic shield. I'll tell you, I haven't had to kick a door down in about 12 years, and I've had to do that now in the last month twice. And the reason being is we're in some hard times post-COVID with people not being able to afford their rents. We've had an increase in evictions, and we've had an increase of writ of possessions. And on these writ of possessions, people are just basically barricading themselves in their homes. And so it's a sad situation, but when I get a court order that's giving me the authority for a forcible entry into a home in order to retrieve that property, I have to have the means to get in that door. In these cases, the managers and property owners were asked if there was a key available. No keys were available, or the locks had been changed by the tenants. And so when you're trying to make entry, you have to find the means to do it. So I've had to use my foot twice in just the last couple of months. So I just need the tools to be able to do the job to where I'm not injuring myself. And then the other thing is having the protection to do so. So that's the whole reason for that. Once I get this equipment, there's no reason to get anything more in the future unless there's some reason to do so. Any questions?
No, I mean, overall, your budget's in line with the other constables, and you're doing a great job.
So the total increase that I'm asking is for $74.50. That's the difference.
Right. And a lot of it's really startup costs.
Yeah, yes, sir. I just need the seed money to get going.
Good.
Thank you for your time, and if I may be excused, I'll get back to work.
Surely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Paul.
Okay. Why don't we take about a 5-minute break and we'll come back at 2 o'clock. come back to order. I'm going to call out of order JP Precinct 4. That's under tab, what is it, 10? 458. Okay. Judge Ragsdale.
Sir, I think the budget is practically the same as last year. I think the only addition was the utilities, which I have no control over.
Looks good.
Are you satisfied with?
Any questions for Judge Ragsdale?
No. I know some. Same that guy from East End could, Don Harris. But anyway, there might be some things that the county can do to help with utilities. We have just a window unit in the courtroom back there, and
Bill, your fans want to see you.
You gotta go to the podium.
Your constituents want to.
Yeah.
oh,
They can't hear you.
that's weird. Okay. Anyway.
Now you're on YouTube.
Hello. Anyway, one of those mini split air conditioning systems in the back, that is something we could take with us when we go, because it would use basically the same hole the window unit uses, as far as from the outside unit to the inside unit. That might cut down. We're spending probably $400 a month in electricity. Water is going to be what it is. Sewer is going to be what it is. But the electricity possibly could be mitigated by use of that type of system. And the way our building is, we're working with the landlord in trying to do like an attic vent to take some of the heat out of the attic. The air conditioning people came there and said that the temperature up in there was about 130 up in the attic, which preheats all the air conditioning, which kind of makes it moot. So we really need to leave the air conditioner on back in the courtroom, because it sucks cool air in the return air in the main part of the building. The back part is not covered by central air heat. It's a part that we added on years ago, or closed in. And but at any rate, so that's about the only thing I can think of that would change our budget. The other one thing, I wasn't necessarily invited to make this comment, but it might be something you want to hear. As far as a special magistrate thing, that I know that question has been brought up and around a few times. There are some hidden expenses in there that you guys would need to, if you aren't aware, would need to be reminded or aware of. Only certain people can be a magistrate. I think that the magistrate would have to be appointed by the district courts. That ain't gonna be cheap, because I've never known a district clerk. I've only been in this business for 48 years. I've never known a district clerk, a district judge type person. I've never known one to do their own paperwork. They always have some clerk, secretary, whatever. So that would probably go along with whoever you brought on out there. The paperwork.
Bill, I need to stop you, because that's not really on the agenda for today.
Oh, well, it would have something to do with our budget if it was added to our budget. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Okay.
But if you want to speak to it at another time, that's fine.
Well, we're going to have to speak to it sometime, but I don't think that's part of
Okay,
your
perfect.
budget.
I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions for Judge Ragsdale?
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
I'm going to skip down some of the things that I'll handle at the end for the Commissioner's Court and County Judge. So let's move down to Animal Services. Try to get the people that are here.
What number is it?
What is the number for Animal Services?
642.
642. Got it.
Good morning. With quite a few things either staying the same or being reduced, I did have some additions here. My lines here. The first one being in our vet services line item, I did increase that by $1,000 because I felt that we actually got pretty lucky that we didn't have a large-scale seizure that required a lot of vet expenses to be incurred. That actually was reduced considerably the current year we're in. I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but it seemed to be way less than it normally is. I think it should at least be at least 5,000, just in case we have to incur some expenses that aren't anticipated. It's just hard to plan for that. Had a slight increase in the operating expense budget based off what I think we can do next year. We need to spend a little bit of money on repairing our quarantine dog room kennels. And this goes back to an issue that you guys are all aware of in the past, paint peeling, chipping the floor, doing the same thing. You run into a sanitation issue, and we did get, I guess you could say, dinged by the state on that, saying that we need to do something there. I'm not looking at an extreme makeover, like as far as what was done in the past in there. In years past, I believe a bridge company had come in. This is prior to me being in charge of the department, but a bridge company, painting company had come in and repainted all of that with a really heavy-duty type of paint. I'm not looking to do any of that. I'm just basically looking to do more than our staff can, and that's have somebody come in and sand that down, repaint that along with the flooring in that room, which we're looking at probably about $2,000 on that. So I had added in just a slight amount because we actually had recommended at $15,740. I put it to $16,000, so just a slight increase. I think we could be okay with that. Then we had our vehicle gas, oil, and maintenance line item. So this is something we're actually going to run into a bit of an issue this year. We're about out of money in that line item for this year. We've had to make a few repairs to existing vehicles, and of course, as we all know, the gas prices are higher than normal. So I actually increased that to $38,000. Part of that is because A, the increase in gas prices, but B, depending on what our situation is with vehicles coming into this next fiscal year, we may be having to make, again, needed repairs to keep these things on the road. So this one is a little bit embarrassing. It's the copier lease. I had come to you guys, I don't remember exactly when it was, in regular Commissioner's Court, and requested a new copier. Whenever I did that, the price that I was quoted to the monthly price, I was used to a set monthly price. I did not take into account that printing color copies of any sort was going to bump that price up, so I completely misbudgeted that for this year. We've had to move money in there to cover that. But I've also tried to reduce the amount of color copies we print off on that. We do print color copies of animal cage cards, helps identify the animals, make sure we don't get them mixed up, and color always helps. There are some other things we use color for, but we were down a printer for a little while too, so I'm trying to transition to more color on that instead of this copier. That being said, we are moving to a new building. There will be 4 of us in there. Basically, the solid waste division will be in there. Currently, we print off of the copier that's in our office downstairs. that is, I guess, basically, I think that one is paid for by Ashley's department, and we try not to print too much on it, but we're going to need something in our new building. So I did get a quote on another copier, just so that we're not having, each time we print something, having to go outside, walk into the front of the other building. So that's worked in there as well. So it is an increase from what it has been in the past. But I feel like it's needed. I think we could probably make do from now. We should be in the building in 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. I think we can probably just try to make do until October, get a new one in there, get one in there. But I think it's something we're gonna need. We do have to make copies, and it's kind of crammed up in the front office, so this would be a needed thing. So on our site cleanup line item, as you know, we had moved some money in there because of a certain piece of property in Centerpoint that was needing to be cleaned up. That was the recommended budget again for this year, but we've never had that much, so I don't know if that was normal. If that's what you guys wanted to do, we could probably get more done with it. Yes, absolutely. But I went ahead and just put down 12,000 because I think that maybe is a more gradual increase each year, because it's not always something we have to do. I think that we could probably do okay with the 12 for some of the stuff that we.
What line are you talking about?
I'm talking. This is going to be on the site cleanup.
You have 0 there.
No, he's got 12,000.
Which one are we talking about then?
486.
46, recommended was 40,000 and he's dropped it to 12.
It shows,
There was a 0 on the
0
projected.
all the way across on what I'm looking at. I don't see any 12,000 there.
We gave you a different vote.
Apparently.
It's
Because it's zeroed out. I was gonna ask you, you got a lot of them that are zeroed out, so you got about 6 on here that I counted that have nothing on them.
Well, there are some that are zeroed out on here, and those are ones that I just really have not ever messed with. They've always been 0, so I would take those out of different line items. Like our one that's going to be 0 is actually our vehicle. Let's see here. Vehicle repair. I think that was actually added in. We have never had money in that because we just use the vehicle gas, oil, and maintenance line item for that.
Bottom line, you're about $18,000 less than last year.
There was a couple of things too. As far as the time to talk about capital outlay and stuff.
Well, we're basically to the end of your budget, and I think it is the time to talk about it. But it looks like to me that from what I recommended to what you requested, it's about a $34,000 difference. And what that really represents, you reduce some, you increase some as you went down through your budget, which all seems reasonable to me. I mean, you know what you need better than I do. But in your capital outlay, you include the lease on those 2 Tahoes that we talked about here a few meetings back. And so with that, it looks like to me that considering the lease of those Tahoes, if that's included in your budget, that's the only thing that really increased basically from what I recommended to initially.
Well, and
You juggled some of it around.
Well, and some of that capital outlay stuff, that was one thing I wanted to tell you guys, like some of it's not going to be needed, I can tell you right now. The request that I put in for the fire alarm system, I put that in, and then and then after another meeting that we had that next week, I found out that we didn't need to do that. That was actually a ring system would be sufficient. So now we're looking at between $500 and $600 instead of $10,000, which I think is good. I just didn't know that was an option. Also, the request that I put back in for 5 watch guard camera systems, I'm actually dealing with somebody that's really good with that company now that's really helping me. I was able to order them. But that $28,000 is not gonna actually, so I made a PO for it, and I've sent that off, it's ordered, but it's not actually paid yet. It could be 12 to 16 weeks, they tell me, before that stuff comes in, which would possibly put us past the end of September into October. So some of that money, which is then when we would pay, but some of that money may have to, I'm not gonna need that again next year, but, you know, it's some of this may have to be paid for after September. I'm gonna be working with the auditor's office as that approaches to make sure, and hopefully they'll get here sooner, it won't even be an issue. You know, two more, we need 2 more systems, so that's a lot cheaper than the 5. I was looking at the whole vehicle thing. That was something, I went ahead and did order the Tahoe, one Tahoe. And then we still have it in here because the request really at this point is for the 2 trucks, because I need to replace, I really need to replace 3. But 2 would be, 3 would be ideal, 2 we could probably get by with another year before the other one. So that order that I had placed last October for those 2 F-150s is still, it's still, well, that order was canceled, but then they redid it and they were able to find 2 more that had been ordered, I guess, by a dealership. So we're still waiting on those. So I'm, at this point, I guess where we're at is we never got the vehicles that were budgeted for last year, or for this year. We were going to use some of that budgeted money to get a Tahoe, which we're doing, we just haven't got it yet. And then I'm hoping to hold the order for the 2 trucks that I did ask for, because we are getting to where we're having major issues with some of these vehicles. I mean, weekly something else quits working on one of them. Either that, one of these Dodges that these guys are driving, it's kind of a safety issue. You know, we've taken it in, it just randomly turns off while he's driving. There's just a lot of stuff. I mean, we got to get some new vehicles here. So that order's still on, even though I'm not approved for 2 more vehicles. I did leave it ordered because if they do happen to come in, we definitely are budgeted for 1 now, but the other one we could then, you know, if you guys don't let me get it, these 2 vehicles in the future, the other one, you know, if we cancel it, even if it's arrived, they can get rid of it. So it's not a, you know, penalty.
It's been a nightmare for all departments.
Without
this year,
doubt.
so, yeah, one other, this is more for the court. The Animal Services Committee, they recommend that we increase vet services far more than Reagan has put into. They think we should have a veterinarian come to the facility on a regular basis, look at our animals. They also think that there are some costs that Terrible Pets Alive has been paying for that they think it should be funded by the county. We don't have exact numbers for some of that stuff yet, but I just want to let the court be aware that during the budget cycle, that committee, through me or through Reagan, would like to see some of these items increased. They think that the business as usual, we've been doing it. Reagan thinks it's sufficient. I think it's probably sufficient, but they think we should have increased veterinary care, immunizations, and things of that nature.
I did request some of those numbers.
Yeah, some of it's increased, but.
Well, and I don't know, well, I requested those numbers from KPA, Kerr, that's why, but I just don't know how much a vet visit per week costs, flat rate, or if, you know, what the, I don't have any numbers. I requested that stuff, and I'm not sure what those numbers are.
Now, I thought a while back we decided we were going to charge somebody to surrender an animal.
We did.
Where's that in your budget?
It's not an expense.
It goes in the general fund. It doesn't go to.
That's
Yeah,
revenue.
We don't, well, it doesn't, it should be here that we know how much is brought in.
It's
Why not?
Revenue, no revenue goes into the line. All revenues go into the general fund that aren't, like the JPs bring in a lot of money, but it's
True.
it's not shown on their budget.
How much have we brought in, do you think? But people are paying that to drop a dog off?
Some, others we run into a lot of issues with.
Yeah, some of them just drop them out where I live. So, yeah.
So anyways, I'm just bringing it up because, we'll probably come back during the budget process with some numbers. The Animal Services Committee met in
It was,
a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe the end of May, I can't remember
Well,
exactly.
the reason I asked what I did, I anticipated that, any funds from that going back into your budget.
right, so they go into the, well, I thought that too at one point, but they go back into the general fund. So we don't actually, so that money, so like in vet services line item, when that money comes out, none goes back in. And, depletes, even though there are people paying, for some of these things. But that money comes out of our line item, doesn't go back in there. We don't get any more money in there until the budget resets.
So anyway, I just brought it up, so I would anticipate that there may be a number for us to look at on the vet services area, whether it's something that we want to do or not do.
Well, it'd be nice if it paid for itself.
Yes.
Right. And there's, and
If it's
the
done
auditor
right.
can probably come up with the revenue we receive at Animal Services. But there's, and the issue that the reason, and it may say that the committee feels that if we had a vet out there on a regular basis, and some more vaccines done, it might cut down on problems we've had in there like kennel cough and things of that nature. And I'm not a vet, I'm not certain. They have, KPA has helped fund a vet to come out there occasionally, I understand. We just need to get an actual number of what that would cost and how it would be done.
Well, basically what we're doing right now is no vet care for just an animal that comes in, unless it has something that we feel it needs vet care for, at which point we will take it to.
Like an injured animal.
Yeah, injured, I mean, if it's something that's, broken leg, something bad, we will get it vet care. If it comes in and it's just kind of itching or something, or shaking its head, we do some things on site that, clean its ears, things like that. So there's some of that stuff that we're doing now, but if it's not something if it's not an imminent danger at that time, we don't believe it is, then we're basically just getting vet care for stuff that we think needs it in.
Sure, because it's animal control, not animal shelter.
Yeah, and the other thing that I've explained to the committee and Reagan's explained to the committee is that animals that we pick up for various reasons, those are not our animals. They're owned by somebody, and we can't start doing vet care on someone else's animal without their permission. And
Good point.
so, and that's an important issue. It has to be nice to do something with the pet, but it's not ours to do that with. So anyway, it's just an issue I'm bringing up because the committee feels pretty strongly about that. I want to have the court be aware.
Okay.
And I guess I kind of jumped ahead a little bit here. I did add a little bit into our operating equipment line item, actually about another 35. I basically doubled it. Because what we're looking at here, trying to get we're looking at getting a medic in-charge system, which is actually a gun, spray gun that, and I'm actually not the one that researched this, but the person that did it couldn't be here today. So I'm basically going off what I have here. But what this thing does is it uses some sort of static charge mixed with the spray to help disinfect some of these more porous surfaces and what we've been dealing with the deterioration of the outdoor kennels and things like that, the painting issue and all that. This is something that could and is supposed to help sanitize better than what we're doing now. So we'll see if that works or not, but that was an added $2,000 to purchase that. And that gives us actually 3 cases of the cleaning solution as well. So 144 bottles, you should be able to make that last for quite a while. which might reduce some of our costs for other cleaning supplies too. And then as long as everybody understands the capital outlay stuff, if y'all have any questions, I mean, it's a Tahoe and two trucks that will have to be paid for through the year.
I think we're good.
Okay?
Any other questions for Reagan?
Hard to
Thank you.
complain when the budget goes down.
Yep. Let's move on to environmental health, which is tab 640, I think. Ashley?
So we do have some slight increases in a few of the line items. We'll start with the first one being office supplies, of an increase of $275, being because of the increase of paper has gone up. That is why we're asking for a bit more, because we do print a lot. And we have been experiencing over the last 2 to 3 years more permits being issued. And so with that, we're printing more paper. I know that Reagan did mention about them not going to be there and they don't print as much. And but due to the cost of paper and other supplies, we're just asking for a slight increase.
You know, Ashley, to kind of help out, I see some very minor tweaking
Okay.
on your budget. The only thing that stuck out to me that was significantly different than what was recommended was the vehicle.
Yes, sir. So we can
And
just
that went
jump
from
right to
7.
it if you like.
Pardon?
We can just jump to that item. if
Yep,
you prefer.
let's do that.
Okay.
I
So
think that's what we
yes,
want to hear about.
For sure. So yes, we are asking for, so back in 2019, we had a budgeted of our fuel and gas and maintenance of $12,000. And because of COVID, we were asked to decrease our budget, which we are gladly happy to do so. And so we had a major repair done to one of the trucks that year, and we had got a new transmission rebuilt on one of the vehicles. We do have older vehicles. Both of our Ford trucks are 2008. And so, with that, we like to have set aside some funds to make any major repair costs to those vehicles. And 2020 to 2021, we didn't have any major repairs that year. This year, our budget was set at $7,000. We had experienced about $2,800 of repairs per vehicle, and then of course with the inflation and cost of gas prices has also increased. So that is why we're asking for about $12,000. Give or take, we'll be glad to have more than what we have now. But
How many miles are on those vehicles, do you know?
my truck has 131,000, and then the brown truck has about 90,000.
About how much?
100?
I'm sorry?
What was the second, the brown truck had how
100?
much?
90,000.
No.
Yeah. And they're good trucks, as long as we keep them maintained up to par and, get any major repairs needed done. So that's pretty much our big increase for the budget. And then the second big increase that you'll see down below is for our council fees at $700, and that is because we have, over the last 2 years, been getting a lot more permits issued, and so that's a fee that we pay to the state of Texas. And so we just want to project for this next coming year. We've been issuing, I've been seeing a lot of new subdivisions being built, and so we know that a lot of that's going to have homes set, so we're just trying to prepare for that new development. And then if you want to jump down to the bottom for conferences, we're just asking for an increase of $544. We attend an annual conference every year, and this year we went deficient in that budget line item, and so we are asking for $1,500 for that amount, which should be sufficient to cover for registration, fuel, travel expenses, and everything.
Any other questions?
No.
Makes sense.
Yeah?
Okay.
We understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Veteran
but
Services.
I will be excused.
Yes, you may.
What number?
439. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm requesting an increase in 2 areas. One is for office supplies. I'm asking for $600, mostly just because everything's gone up in price, and toners really are our biggest supply cost. And then for conferences as well, I'm requesting an increase of $1,000. This is because I don't know where our conference will be held. And so I'm just asking $300 for hotels, $200 for meals, and $500 for gas. But we don't know where conferences are held till about 3 weeks before they're scheduled. And when COVID happened, we weren't doing any in person. They brought it back last year. I didn't attend because I had COVID. So the farthest I've been so far is South Padre. I don't know where it'll be held this year though. So just in case, I just went to the farthest location I've been to just to project it in case it's at that location again.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Human Resources.
493.
I have no changes monetarily. There is one, the background check item, which is number 493,317. We're saving money in the background checks using the DPS, but we are spending more money in recruiting because I'm using Indeed. So I'd just like to ask if we could just call that background checks and recruiting. Just change the name of the account.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Indigent Health Services.
Have no changes.
What number is it?
150.
What was that?
150?
The bottom 50.
150, back. Yeah. Yep, no changes.
Okay.
Okay. Tax Assessor Collector.
499.
Good morning, gentlemen. As you know, we'll be going over 3 separate funds that I maintain. The one you called is $499. My current year's budget as amended is $987,390. The bulk of the expenses are outlined in a letter and backup data submitted to y'all earlier. I'm requesting an increase of $1,000 in overtime. This will be to help cover some of the cost of my bookkeeping staff. The reporting requirements from them is increasing, and they both have to get here approximately 6:45 every morning just to be able to open the door. I utilize as much comp time as I can with that, but I still have to pay some overtime. As they increase in their longevity, it increases what we have to pay per hour. So I respectfully request $1,000. One of the biggest costs I've seen in either one of my funds that I maintain is postage. This is something that I can't get around. We're expecting another postage increase, not this month, but in July. Metered first-class mail will go up by 4 cents, or a 7.5% increase for first-class letter, and that represents 25% increase in postage rates since January of 2020. I've virtually spent it all this year already, and we still have 3 months left to go. And finally, office supplies. Quotes for envelopes that I use to mail out tax notices, receipts, has increased by 17% since the start of the fiscal year. Copy paper, I've calculated, has increased by 13.5%. And the paper, the perforated paper that I use
to send out the tax statements has doubled since October. I'm requesting an increase in that line item, which is 499-310 of $3,500. Net increase versus what was recommended in the budget is $6,000.
Makes sense.
All good. Any questions? Looks good, Bob. Let's move on to elections, which is what, tab 402?
Yes, sir. With the elections,
And just looking at it from the helicopter, other than the ballot expense, postage and office supplies do it again. Right?
once more, even more dramatic on postage. The voter registration cards are mailed out as postcards. They're going up 4 cents each. That represents 10% increase for that type of postage. I will point out that in my ballot expense, there will be increased costs because of the paper increase, as well as envelopes for ballots by mail. In addition, I've estimated the programming cost for the election with the county bond of about $1,500. On notices required by mail, I must point out that I have not factored in any cost that may be incurred for publication required to hold the bond election. I am assuming that would be paid for out of the general fund. If not, I will need some funds for that. It may be able to be paid out of this fiscal year, but I just want to point that out to the court. My software maintenance, as per the contract, has increased 4%.
Any questions?
Nope.
Looks in order. And then we'll wrap you up with Fund 12 for election services.
Yes, sir. This is a dedicated fund. The money from this fund is primarily what we make for putting on the elections for other governmental entities. Currently has approximately $88,000 in that fund balance. The major expense that I'm asking for increase this year would be in line item 641-200, 12-641-200. And this is to take care of my staff. They're required to use their vehicles. We have 2 courthouse fleet vehicles. They're required to utilize their vehicles on a regular basis. The most glaring one I saw was during the primary election. Well, we have both courthouse vehicles in use. My staff is spanning out to 20 polling places. One of them was required to go from River Hills Mall for a polling place to the Divide Chapel. I've enclosed a map on how many miles that is. It actually costs my staff member more in fuel than they made just for the drive. I know, Commissioner, you talked about fare on Monday. This is a different type of fare. We can't ask our employees to have money come out of their pocket for in-county travel. I'm not asking for anything for me as an elected official when I use my truck. But we do need to take care of the staff. I'm respectfully requesting $4,800 to cover when they need to use their personal vehicles for in-county travel. This will take a policy amendment. I realize that. But it is something that is needed, and I am willing to take the money out of the dedicated fund for election expense, not the general fund. in order to cover this. During early voting, they have to travel between the courthouse, the youth event center, juvenile detention, and the Ingram administration office. They may have to make 2 or 3 trips. If there's an issue that comes up and a county vehicle is not available, we can't wait for one. The daily travel back and forth to the juvenile detention, once again, if we have county vehicles, we use them. But if they're not available for some reason, I do need that. I feel that using the dedicated fund, it won't come from money that the election department is earning. IT on election day also fans out their entire staff to ensure that everything's working properly. I'm willing to reimburse the IT out of that department too. So I respectfully request that we come up with a policy amendment to pay for in-county travel.
Just for the record, that's not about fairness, that's about what's right and wrong. You're not talking about equally distributing something, you're talking about what is the right thing to do.
Absolutely, Commissioner.
And I agree with you.
You have to look at that. It's a different thing. It's an election service, and it's for a specific purpose. And they have to use their cars when they don't have county vehicles, and it's a lot cheaper to reimburse them than have a bunch of county vehicles. And so it's very different than normal county travel for employees.
And I personally appreciate you bringing it in as a budget item, even though we haven't changed the policy yet. That way we can at least plan for it.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Crime Victims' Rights Coordinator. Waiting in the wings.
What number is that?
438. Yes, ma'am.
As y'all know, most of mine is predetermined because I write the grant before I come. This year, there was a little bit of a change, and I'm coming to you asking you for some additional funds. Because of the time that the grant was written, there was no training available. They posted it about a month after the grant was turned in. Grant would not let me just put generic training in, and I have to name it, or it can't be in there, so couldn't do that. So I'm coming to you asking the county to help us be able to go to the biennial training that they haven't held because of COVID. So it'll be coming up in May of '23. So that's the only thing really that has changed. Currently, Kathy in my office is working under my training number, so to speak. This is a separate thing. Eventually, I have to send her to that to be able to really send in applications. But we're just sort of limping along on that. It's not available yet, so I'm just throwing that out there while we're here. The numbers that I gave you, I estimated almost $1,500 to do this. Those are sheer estimates. They have not announced the venue or anything like that, so I have no way to calculate hotel costs or anything like that.
Any questions?
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Public Relations. What's the tab on that one?
406.
406.
There's no change.
Okay. So I think we're good on that one. So then we move on to JP Precinct 3.
What number?
Good morning.
I didn't get the number.
457.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, nothing has changed on mine. The only one change is $180, and that is for the bond
for when the elected official comes into office in January of 2023. That's the only thing that's changed.
And there's no way you can trim that.
Well, no, not anymore. Not any more than that.
Yeah.
But, so,
It looks good.
That's good.
Thank
Pat.
Thank you. JP Tech Fund.
There are not any changes on this. This is just the technology fund, and it's
What,
dedicated fund.
what number is it?
26.
Okay. Got it. Yep, there's no change on it. Justice Court Building Security.
That's 113, and they're also.
Same on that one.
Okay,
If there's any security improvements to be made, they can make them.
okay. Bruce, IT.
408.
Okay.
Where would you like me to start?
With the biggest number.
All right, the capital outlay. I have several estimates that we were given for new phone systems. The most appropriate one is for $230,450.
Okay.
And why do we need this now? Just so everybody understands. Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Now, we have also explored the option of using cloud-based services, but found that the return on investment was horrible. A on-premise system is more expensive to begin with, but less expensive in the long run.
So, is this new system gonna solve all of our phone problems? Sure.
As much as we can, yes.
None of them's gonna solve everything.
Yeah, no one's gonna solve everything. But
We're gonna see a big improvement.
Yes. One of the things we have found out in going through the research for this is that most providers do not do phone systems anymore. Period. So it's getting harder and harder to do an on-premise system. And that's, or they're going to some type of hybrid system where they have a little bit of stuff here and the rest of it's in the cloud. Again, more expensive. The other big portion of that number is for general desktop replacements. We've got $166,200 in there for that. We have a bunch of desktops and laptops that have just, they're aged out and need to be replaced.
And we just did that a couple of years ago.
It's a recurring thing.
Yeah. And so everybody understands that we're not all bought at the same time originally. They don't age out at the same time.
Right. And typically, our equipment inventory is over $3 million. We need to replace that completely every 5 years. So you take a chunk of that, that's about $600 a year on average.
Any other questions for Bruce?
On the software side, seems like last year that we had to do a big upgrade on Microsoft.
We did a partial. We did a partial. Yeah, this is the rest of it.
The rest of it been done this year?
Yes.
We were having equipment that wouldn't run the new stuff.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Well, not as bad as I thought.
Okay, no other questions? Thanks, Bruce.
All right.
Constable Precinct 2? I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
552.
Okay, got it.
Morning.
How you doing?
Stop me if you've heard this one. I need more fuel money. Looking for an increase of $1,800. I just checked and I've got about 270 left. So, we all know what this means. And then, vehicle repair and maintenance, I did an increase of $1,500. The vehicle's gonna need tires toward the end of the year.
Any questions?
Looks good.
Looks in order. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Constable Precinct 4?
554.
I only have two things, basically. One is same as everybody else with the fuel. And then under capital outlay, the cost of a truck has almost doubled, it seems like, or at least the monthly notes have. I had the same problem Reagan had. The truck was ordered, approved in its current year budget. It still has not been manufactured, so they can do whatever they do with them. And found out that they found an orphan, they call an orphan lease, and we got that one on hold. Or there's actually two of them supposed to be delivered somewhere to North American, one of them coming here, but that's just going to be an increase in the monthly amount, and that's what the change of the capital outlay. And within that note, I must say that there is a new camera system installed in that truck. I currently do not have one. I'm supposed to have one, but the old one is just done, and there's no fixing it. So that's part of the increase, but most of it's just the truck itself.
Right. Any questions?
No.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back and pick up the ones that, we'll go to County Judge, which is tab 400. And the only thing that's really changed with regard to the County Judge is I now have the grant administrator in my budget. And the $1,000 difference you see there is the training for her. This year we used some of my training budget to fund, or was it my training budget?
To send your training.
Yeah, to send her to a conference. That's the only change there. Other than that, it's what we've been recommending.
And your 1250 on.
Oh, and the bond is more. So that's 400. We go to mental health is 405. And there's no changes there. And then we go to county court, which is 426. And there are no changes there. And then we have Commissioner's Court, which is tab 401, back to the front. And we don't have any change there. So that's kind of walked us through all of our departments. Ms. Shelton?
If it's okay, I can squeeze in a few more funds that we can talk about, and even the county auditor department 495.
Okay,
And
so
there are no changes.
in 495 is your office?
Yes.
Okay. No changes? Okay, so what else do we have?
Next, if we'll look at our debt, the first one is Fund 61. It is the same, so there's no changes.
Okay. That's the
Jail.
bond?
Jail bond.
Okay.
Next is Fund 62. There are
3 notes in this fund, and these are all related to the wastewater treatment sewer plant
Okay.
project.
And there's no changes in that. So we've got that reviewed.
The next one is the 2020 tax note. There are not any changes in that.
Very good.
And then Fund 67 is the refunding bonds that we did last year, or 2020,
Right.
and there's no change in that.
Good. Anything else you want to squeeze in?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Well, we've had a full morning. Any questions before we adjourn? Very well, then we are adjourned.